I feel like that moment from Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
I'm not dead!
Yeah, he says he's not dead.
Yes, he is. I'm not!
Look, wisdom and vengeance are probably my two least favorite sagas, even though vengeance does get the benefit of having dangerous and get in the water, which are absolute bops. And like, as much as I wish the ending were different, I did actually really enjoy God Games for what it was. It's a fun idea, and I think it works well for what Jorge wants to do there. Obviously, massive deviation from the Odyssey. Don't care. It's fun. Like, it's super fun. But I have been promised that ITHACA Saga is going to put years back on my life, cleanse my pores, erase my anxieties, like, do wonders, rejuvenate, revitalize me. We shall see. No, but on the reals, I'm actually really excited for this saga because, one, I'd like to actually freaking meet Penelope, who's a badass, and we love Penelope, especially in the Odyssey, because, fun fact, for anybody who hasn't read the Odyssey, Penelope is the only character in the entirety of the Odyssey who actually outwits, outsmarts, outplays Odysseus. And it is so fitting that it is his wife, because absolutely she is his equal. She is on the same level intellect-wise, and in the end, she has a moment where she straight up outwits him and messes with him, and he falls for it. It's probably gonna happen later in the saga, I hope, so I'm not gonna say anything here. But I will say that ITHACA Saga tells me we are doing the last bit of the Odyssey, known as the slaughter of the suitors. It is so satisfying in the Odyssey. So in the Odyssey, this part of the story actually takes place in kind of multiple little segments, as Homer likes to build the dramatic tension and the dread and the anticipation to get you to this point of Odysseus is freaking here and he's gonna fuck shit up. So again, in the Odyssey, something that we didn't have in Epic, very understandably, is this whole stop known as the Isle of the Phaeacians, which is this interesting island. It's almost, you could say, probably one of the first written examples of what we might call a utopia. In fact, they have ships that are like magic and sail and steer by like your thought. It's totally like kind of a utopic society. It's wild. And that's where Odysseus sits, tells his whole story of how he had even gotten to that island. So he takes us through all the stuff that's basically already happened in Epic and tells it as a big grand story. And then from there, he sails back to Ithaca. Now, in the meanwhile, there is one bit that happened at the end of what gets called the Telemachia, or the Telemachy, which is those first 4 books of the Odyssey, which essentially just follow Telemachus. Essentially, some of the stuff that gets covered or focused on in the Wisdom Saga. One big thing that is super important, which didn't get touched on in the Wisdom Saga, part of it because we didn't mention anything about what are essentially books 3 and 4 of the Odyssey, which is Telemachus goes to the mainland. He goes off because he really needs to speak to some still living Greek heroes who are incidentally also kings, so hero kings if you will, who not only fought at Troy with his father and can hopefully give him answers to that question, but can also give him advice on how to deal with the suitors. As much as I was like ranting and raging in the Wisdom Saga, one of the big issues that Telemachus has, it's like, why has he seemingly sat on his hands for so long here, is one, because we haven't declared Odysseus dead, it's not as though Telemachus can step up and be what you might call man of the house or the new head of Odysseus' household, and therefore be in running to be the king of Ithaca. Part of those problems being, because Odysseus has not been declared dead, one, we don't know about all of that good kleos, that good glory and that fame, the legacy, if you will, how that passes on to Telemachus. You therefore need to go through all the funeral rites and aspects related to if we declare Odysseus dead. And because we haven't declared Odysseus dead, if Telemachus were to just step in and take over in this way, he could potentially be seen as usurping his father's throne, especially if it turns out Odysseus is alive, which is a big awkward. And one thing I love about the 2 kings that Telemachus goes to see in the Odyssey, specifically he goes to see old King Nestor and King Menelaus, or Menelaus, and Helen over in Sparta, is these are 2 kings who in their family histories and backgrounds have borne witness to what happens when family members usurp a throne from each other. Now, those instances are done with malintent, and while Telemachus doesn't have malintent, intention is a bit of a gray area and sometimes doesn't really matter when it comes to your actions, which is often why the characters are constantly punished even if they just made a mistake and didn't mean to do things. It's like, but you still broke the rules. In the case of Nestor, for those who don't know about Old King Nestor, sorry, we're kind of tangenting because he's a character who only gets briefly mentioned, but he's important to the Odyssey. Old King Nestor is old. He's said to have lived like 3 lifetimes. Nestor is actually a distant kind of like half cousin of Jason from Jason and the Argonauts. Nestor was actually an Argonaut. And so he witnessed all of the shit that went down in that kingdom. He was there on the front lines watching it. He would have witnessed the shit that happened in the Seven against Thebes, which was a tragic moment in like mythological history, if you will, as a fallout of the events of what happens with Oedipus and his family, because his 2 sons basically end up in a civil war with each other for rulership of the city-state kingdom of Thebes. Now he's then also bearing witness to the Trojan War. And what's super incredible also about Nestor is the fact that he's still king of Pylos. He has not handed over the duty of rulership or passed the scepter, or whatever, if you will, onto any of his sons. One of his sons, in fact, actually dies in the war at Troy, and it's quite sad, but he hasn't passed this on to any of his sons. And Nestor is freaking old. Anyone else who is his age would have by this point already passed it down to their son. But the fact that Nestor is still essentially being described as in his physical prime at that age is just insane. So yeah, Nestor is just like the most badass old dude ever in Greek myth. Like seriously, even like everyone around him is just like, dude, how is he still like so fucking badass? He's so old. He's called Old King Nestor at Troy, and this is now 20 years later. Man still got it. But then also importantly, Menelaus as I call him. Obviously we spoke about the House of Atreus back in the Troy saga. He witnessed firsthand watching his father kind of lose his throne, getting it back, a whole bunch of kerfuffles with that, and that he and Agamemnon had to kind of like run away from Mycenae and then like come back. It's a whole mess. He's seen that firsthand. Now, nobody has seen a situation like what's going on in Ithaca. This kind of I'm calling it like a limbo status, that the entirety of the status quo of Odysseus's rulership, whether he's alive or not, which ultimately reflects the stability of Ithaca. If we, take like Odysseus's household as a microcosm, the macrocosm would kind of be Ithaca. Everything's in flux. And there's no real precedent to which Telemachus can turn that gives him an idea of, how do I deal with this? It's part of why he needs Athena to come down to kind of say, look, get your ass in gear. Here's some ground rules you're going to lay, and then you're going to get your answers. And then also speaking with these 2 kings who, yes, are great heroes from the Trojan War, but also have personal experience in watching like potential usurpations and seeing their kingdoms or kingdoms they're from be in flux. Speak with them. They will help you. This is really what Telemachus needs, because yes, he's had Mentor and anyone else who was there to guide him and educating him, training him in how to fight and all of these things. But this specific situation, he's got nothing. There's no book he can read. There's no mentor
puns unintended,
he can go to really help him figure out what to do, which is why he needs a little bit of the kick in the butt from Athena and why he needs to go speak with those kings. Now, the big thing is he feels safe enough leaving because obviously the suitors are not going to do anything physical. Xenia is super important. He would not leave the island of Ithaca if he had not had the moment where he comes in his quorum, shames everybody knows what's at risk if they do anything super fucking stupid, and then he leaves. But the suitors decide to get sneaky, and they go, oh, so he's going to be sailing back from the mainland, is he? Here's how we get him out of our way.
And now stop.
Before everybody goes, but Matt, you said they would never do anything physical. You were all up in arms over Little Wolf. Aha, this is where we say the suitors are actually quite cunning and conniving. They plan this out very specifically. In that, they're going to waylay him on the sea. They talk about there being this sort of like a tiny, almost like Beryllian island, cove, rock, whatever, that's in between the mainland and Ithaca, where they say we can lie in wait and we'll hide, and then we'll see him coming, but he won't see us, and then we raid, we attack. He dies. Nobody's gonna know it's us. If they kill everyone, he goes down to the bottom of the sea, and it's just tragic. That does lead me to mention that the idea of raiding culture, if you will, seems to have been something that's reasonably normal. Referencing here from the quite lengthy introduction to the Fagles translation, he notes that the action of sacking and attacking the town of Ismaros and other things, that it is obviously an action not unusual in its time and place. One of Odysseus's epithets is in fact Toliportos, which means sacker of cities, and goes on to say piracy was endemic in the Aegean, a sea of islands large and small, of jagged coastlines full of hidden harbors, whenever there was no central sea power strong enough to suppress it. And let's remember, Greece as a unified identity did not exist at this point. And you can actually see that even in Homer's text. He never calls them the Greeks. They are always the Achaeans, the Danaans, the Argives, all these different words for sort of like these tribal aspects, these regions of Greece, but never actually the Greeks. Because that idea doesn't exist. This is still the Bronze Age. You're not going to start getting even close to that idea until you're probably nearer the Classical Age, and even then you have something like the Peloponnesian War starts, so Athens versus Sparta. These city-states still had their very own individualist feeling identities, and the idea of them being Greek was still kind of in flux. So the idea that potentially Telemachus, while on the sea, was subject to some form of high seas piracy, their version of it, might not be so out of the norm. They wouldn't necessarily have a reason to suspect the suitors at first, especially if they say, we didn't do it. What evidence do you have? But this is super important. They do plan to try to kill him out on the sea. Again, not in his palace, not even on Ithaca, because he is still the son of their king who has not yet been officially declared dead. So again, elements of cunning to the suitors. They know exactly what they're doing. They know how to exploit the systems that are in place and a lot of the kind of cultural ethics that are there. And I think, again, it just also shows how scary they are, that they come up with this plan. And it's not a bad plan. Like, obviously, we're not in favor of it. We're rooting for Telemachus. But it's not a bad plan. They genuinely thought it through. They just are also admittedly totally ignoring the fact that Zeus totally sent them a sign with eagles saying, I'm on Telemachus' side, so, you know, they're not always the smartest. But they don't anticipate that ultimately Athena is going to be at Telemachus' side, and she's the reason that this does not work. Meanwhile, she's also helping Odysseus to, you know, get to the Isle of the Phaeacians, survive there, do his shit there, and then make his way back home. Now, when we get to Ithaca, Athena disguises Odysseus, so he looks like an old beggar. And he's taking the gauge of what's going on here. He's not liking what he's seeing. He's not loving it. Don't blame him. I'd be super pissed. He, of course, meets his beloved, loyal, best fucking boy, Argos, who is his dog, who at this point has to be something like 20 years old, who can't even really move. He's like in neglect at this point because he just like can't move, and he's just been waiting, and he sees through Odysseus' disguise and recognizes him. But Odysseus can't interact with him because he can't give himself away. And it's like, I think any pet parent, that is the most gut-wrenching moment like that you get leading into the slaughter of the suitors, because it's like, because Argos then dies. But at least knowing his master came home, he waited loyally and faithfully for his master, and his master came home. And it's just like, I can't even. I get I'm getting hot in the face and emotional thinking about it. It hurts so good. It hurts so good and so bad at the same time, Homer. How dare you? Which I do have to look at Jorge and say, please don't put Argos in here. I cannot bear that heartbreak. I will not do well. He also nearly gets found out by another character, and that is Euryclea, or Euryclea, who is essentially an old nursemaid. She is a servant, kind of a slave, who was purchased by his father, Laertes, to come into the household. And she essentially helped to raise Odysseus and also very much helped to raise Telemachus. And she assists in the giving of proper xenia. Yes, he may look like an old, dirty beggar, but you give xenia, it does not matter who it is. Again, you never know. This could be a god in disguise. Theoxenia is very important. And she's, you know, like washing his feet and kind of cleaning him up. And she notices a scar on Odysseus's knee. And she clocks that scar like that. She knows immediately. And he's like, don't give me away. Yes, I'm here, but I've got shit to deal with. And she's like, you got it. She's like, no problem, Odysseus. Fucking got you. kick-ass. We love Claire. She is awesome. And that moment is really beautiful, especially when, again, we're having yet more moments of Odysseus being like, you can't tell anybody, don't give me away. The stakes are extremely high. The tension is there. Part of what we do with this whole building of all this tension and drawing out, kind of like sort of drawing out the moment until we actually get him slaughtering the suitors, is to ramp the tension and to say, like, he's now experiencing firsthand all of the stakes that are in play. And that's part of the fun of watching it again. As I say, it's like Trojan Horse, the sequel, except this time it's personal. And so he has come in disguise. He's not what he seems on the surface. He is here to sack his home, basically, kind of, in a way. Mostly just kill all the intruders. And for anybody wondering, he's completely justified in his actions to do this. We might look at it and say, wow, that feels like overkill. Nah, it ain't. The Greeks see that as perfectly justified. In fact, the gods talk about it on Olympus. And what happens in the slaughter of the suitors is a moment that is known as Aristeia, which is like excellence. And it's this moment of such incredible military fighting prowess. It's just like, so this is what we're building towards. This is what I need Ithaca to deliver to me. I need that. And then, of course, obviously there's some beautiful emotional moments after that, but the big climax, a lot of it, is in the slaughter of the suitors. Like, we drive towards that moment. The Odyssey builds you towards that moment. They hint at it throughout the story, and you're just waiting for it. And it's so satisfying when it comes. The challenge. I guess the challenge is this gonna be a Penelope song? Do I get a Penelope song finally? Because I've been missing her. She's truly the smartest character in the Odyssey, because if we say Odysseus is the smartest, the one who outsmarts him and outplays him, outwits him, is truly the smartest. Thus Penelope. So let's hear, oh, these titles tell me some, but not much. So I'm super curious. Pacing is gonna be my big question. And also going in, I'm assuming we're gonna skip basically what gets called book 24, which is like, you do the slaughter of the suitors, the reunions and all that, and then there's stuff that happens afterward, kind of like the fallout and stuff you have to do to make sure you don't get like blood feuds, divine retribution, awkward shit. I'm assuming we're gonna skip that because it can feel kind of like a letdown after you've already done the catharsis and stuff. Like, super important culturally to the Greeks. For the purpose of Epic the musical, not that important. But okay, let us get into the challenge. Ooh, strings. Penelope. Not a violin. Viola? Viola. That sounds like a really higher viola. It doesn't quite sound like a violin. If I'm wrong, I'm sorry. Is this supposed to be Penelope's instrument? Obviously, we've heard that theme. Penelope. Like, we know that is Penelope's theme. So, oh my god, we're getting... Finally, my Queen of Ithaca is here.
I'm supposed to choose a suitor to wear the crown.
I mean, you don't have to, but it is stressed.
I said I would choose as soon as I weave the shroud.
Ah, mentioning the shroud.
They don't know that every night I unthread all the work I've done. 'Cause I'd rather lie than allow them to think they've won the...
Yo, word. First off, the voice. This is what I mean, like, can't necessarily count the Penelope siren that we've heard or the little bit we got in Keep Your Friends Closer. I have been dying for a Penelope song. Mentioning the shroud. Oh, that's so important. This is mentioned pretty early on in the Odyssey. Again, we've had to restructure, so this makes total sense that we don't bring it until later. What happened was, so the suitors don't show up immediately. We know it seems they are there at least 5, potentially to 6 years before the start of the Odyssey. So they've been there at least 5 to 6 years, it seems. They at least apparently gave a grace period after the end of the Trojan War, but okay. Penelope is able to keep them at bay and do all this stuff, but as the years go by, that gets harder and harder, especially as more heroes are returning from Troy. Again, everybody's not getting back at the same time. They're all having their own nostoi. The last to arrive before Odysseus is Menelaus, and he doesn't get back until 8 years after the conflict has ended. But that still does mean 2 more years. After that, where's Odysseus? We don't know. She's really coming up against the clock. We're sort of building the stakes and the potential sort of powder keg that's happening here. And one of the things she did to keep the suitors at bay for 3 to 4 years, this worked, was, we know that upon the death of Anticlea, who is Odysseus' mom, that Laertes seems to have just like fallen into despair. And he is now living as basically a hermit somewhere off on a small farm on the island, and he's in seclusion. Like he's not dealing with anybody, he doesn't want to see anybody, he's not doing well, but there's kind of nothing you can do for him, and he has at this point long since stepped back from the throne, because obviously Odysseus would not be king if Laertes is still running things. So everybody's assuming he's gonna die soon. He is pretty old, he's obviously not in his prime anymore, and he doesn't, again, seem to be doing well, so she says, well, I will not consider marrying anybody until I weave this funeral shroud for my current father-in-law. That was a sign of respect. And in addition, you can look at some of the sexism of the age, which was that, oh, weaving, that is a perfectly respectable, womanly activity. Because often women would do this alone and only with other women, so nobody's worried that, I don't know, she's banging some dude in the back or something. Okay, guys, sure. But she does this literally for like, it's said something like 3 to 4 years she weaves. And then at night, she undoes everything that she did before. Now, the only reason the suitors find out about the deception is one of her maids sells her out. Yeah, a maid Knox. There are famously this small group of maids who sleep with the suitors, and one of them tells on Penelope, and it's awkward. Super awkward. So she gets found out, and the suitors essentially force her to finish the shroud in a way that they at least say, you're doing this in public in front of everybody, because it's implied she was probably doing it in a private room where nobody really was looking. And then they're like, you're gonna do that where everybody can see, because we're gonna clock the progress. You've made this promise, we're gonna make you keep it. Yeah, again, it's super awkward and terrible. But now the shroud is done. It has been completed. So again, we're kind of at a situation where things are getting really tense. So this is part of the reason that Athena tells Zeus, like, all right, enough's enough. Like, Ithaca's at its limit, we've got to do something, right? Because she also looks after Penelope a lot in the Odyssey. She frequently comes because Penelope is obviously highly stressed, grief-stricken because she doesn't know if her husband is alive or dead, and Athena is shown to constantly allow Penelope to sleep, which is like, yo, why are you putting her up for the count? I'm like, Penelope probably hasn't had a good night's sleep in 20 years. Athena's doing her girl a solid. She's like, girl, get your rest. I got you. I got this. Don't worry. And it is known that Penelope was also, like Odysseus, kind of favored by Athena. She's fucking clever. Again, let's never forget how clever Penelope is, the smartest character in the Odyssey, because she's the only one who in any way, at any point in the story, outfoxes Odysseus. But I love this, and this beautiful tone we're getting from the singer for Penelope. This is beautiful. Absolutely gorgeous.
I never thought that I'd resort to this. Just know I'll be here. But I don't know how much longer I'll last since we saw that storm.
Since we saw the time. This is a reference to 600 Strike, isn't it?
I would love to not think about that, but okay.
Sure. Okay.
And though it was so close to our kingdom, it was far from the norm.
Yeah.
Unless, oh, could it be some kind of sign that my world is all about to change?
I like that line a lot. Could it be a sign? Again, you're finding portents and omens in the things that are around you. That's actually that's a great line. Because again, omens and prophecies are a major theme of the Odyssey. Something we've not really touched on too much here. I guess really since Underworld Saga, and then before Underworld Saga, not really since the Troy Saga. It's only been mentioned a couple of times. But omens, prophecies, those pop in a lot more frequently in the Odyssey. Again, one of the major ones that would have happened on Ithaca being after Telemachus calls this massive quorum and gathers all the kind of like noble families, if you will, of Ithaca and lays down the law. A pair of eagles come in and like swoop through, and it's done in such a way to make it clear to anybody who knows really how to read omens, Zeus is siding with Telemachus. Telemachus is in the right, and a lot of the older members of these noble families absolutely are like, oh shit, Telemachus is in the right, he's being favored by Zeus, the gods are on his side. The suitors, on the other hand, are like, you old people don't know shit, we're awesome. It's like, oh my god, you alpha male bro fuckwads. Or as I say, they're the mean girls. They're just the Heathers. They are the worst. But oh no, I like that line, nodding towards portents and prophecies. And again, if we're going with the 600 strike storm, which I would love to scrub from my memory, that would be abnormal storm. Now, mind you, the weather can get pretty gnarly out on the Mediterranean, but that is meant to have been some sort of highly abnormal storm. She would absolutely look at that and think that's a sign from the gods. That must be a sign. I don't know what else to think that is. Oh, so using that in combination with the bow as the challenge. Interesting. Because one of the aspects, again, of Odysseus coming in to do his Slaughter of the Suitors are Troy 2.0 is coming in disguise, and he holds on to this disguise for like a whole day, basically. But one thing that happens is he actually talks to Penelope while in disguise, and he doesn't give himself away, but it's pretty much implied that she's sort of figuring out who he is. She has a sense about it, like she's pretty sure this might be her husband in disguise. She's got no confirmation, and he won't give himself away. Again, it's beautiful, and it's heart-wrenching, because you're just sitting there like, oh my god, you're right there. You're right there. Just tell her. But he can't. He hasn't gotten rid of the suitors yet. And the suitors, mind you, are also just like abominable to him, because they just think he's some old beggar. Like, they hurl stuff at him. They're awful to him. And Penelope comes in like the fucking queen. She's like, you're gonna fucking stop that right now in my goddamn house? She also takes Telemachus to task for it. She was like, you let them treat that stranger that way? What the fuck, kid? Did I not raise you right? Again, we love Penelope. That's why I wanted so much more of her story. Because I just love her. Like, this is just me saying I love her so much. She's a character I adore. She's such an interesting woman. And she's written in a way that makes her, again, just like, she's super complex, and there's so many layers to her character. So good. But yeah, she has this conversation, and that's what leads her to doing the challenge with the bow. The famous bow of Odysseus, and I'm assuming that's what this song is about. And so we have the combination of the shroud has been finished, everything's becoming even more of a powder keg, especially when the suitors have now failed to kill Telemachus on the sea, which, you know, well, that sort of gets bypassed because it's a big nothing burger. Nothing happens between them, so it's not even brought up. And then Penelope also is like, aha, like she calls in a seer, the portent, it's called like the portents gather, basically. It's all starting to come together. And then we get the challenge. This is such a beautiful song too. The melody is gorgeous. And again, I will say it again, the singer for Penelope.
Is it finally time for the challenge I arranged? Though I never thought that it would come to this. Just know I'll be here.
Sorry, I'm pausing because it's like da 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 da. I've heard that melody before, and I don't think it's just here. I wonder if that's a nod to a famous melody from somewhere. I could be crazy. It's just a really lovely melody. And this driving mix behind her is also nice. Again, we're giving so much action.
Buying you time.
It is buying time.
Buying you time.
Oh, hell yeah, girl. It's the suitors.
Whoever can string my husband's own bow and shoot through 12 axes cleanly will be the new king. Sit down at the throne and rule with me as his queen.
That's beautiful. Oh my god. Sorry, I'm like, again, chills. You're welcome. Can we see this? No, you probably can't. Congratulations, Penelope. I have gotten absolute chills, as you deserve, my fucking diva. Oh my god. Beautiful. Whoever can string my husband's old bow. Like, we get the bow, shooting through the 12 axes. And the fun part about this challenge is shooting through the 12 axes is an insanely good trick. But the real trick is stringing the freaking bow. Like, she's fully anticipating these suitors are not going to be able to do that. And rightfully so. The reason it is so difficult to string the bow is it is described as the word palintonos, which means drawn backwards. So I'm not an archer, so I remember reading this going like, what? Like, I don't get it. Like, was it a really hard bow? I don't get it. So obviously, you know me, back in the day, I had to do the reading to figure it out to understand what was going on. What it essentially means is obviously bows are not stored while strung taut. It risks warping the bow, so they are stored in a more relaxed state, and you have draw weight and tension that is involved in order to string it. Now, a palintonos board means it is stretched or bent backwards. So it's essentially reversing the way that it's relaxed and stored, which means it is so much harder to string. One, traditional methods you would use to string a bow don't work. You'll just end up not being able to string it. And if somehow you basically string it backwards, aka the wrong way, if you try and draw it, the string's gonna come off, it's not gonna work. It also means in order to do it correctly and know the trick in how to string it, it takes so much more strength in order to do so. Essentially, the major trick to stringing this bow is like using your legs to essentially kind of like lock it in place and getting it to bend to the proper shape. There's a reason Homer likes to obsess over thighs. Specifically Odysseus's thighs. Man's got tree trunk legs.
Man is just fucking strong.
So the whole brilliance of this challenge that Penelope sets up, and she tells Odysseus in disguise that this is what she's going to be doing, she doesn't expect any of these suitors to be able to string the bow. One, they likely don't know how. You need to know the trick to do it. And then two, they're not strong enough to do it. Odysseus is like a fucking He-Man, okay? Like, the man is just fucking strong. He's a Greek hero. Of course he's fucking strong. So she figures it almost doesn't even matter if you can shoot through the 12 axes, because the likelihood of somebody stringing the bow is already insane. But then you have to pull off the most insane trick shot to get it through the axes. And the fun part about shooting through the axes is that it's left vague enough that there is so much debate on the axes. So I'm gonna actually read here a really great note. It's in part of the notes on the translation portion here of Fagles, where he says, "There has been much controversy about the axes and still no agreement. When Telemachus sets them up for the contest, he digs a trench in the dirt floor of the hall, plants them in it in a straight line, and stamps the earth down to hold them firm. Many editors have assumed that what he planted in the trench were the axe blades, with the holes for the helves lined up. But to shoot an arrow through such a lineup, the archer would have to be lying on the floor, an impossible position from which to draw the bow, not to mention making such a difficult shot. In any case, we are told that when Odysseus does shoot an arrow through the axes, spoilers, I mean, come on guys, we know Odysseus is gonna do it. We know Odysseus is gonna pull the shot. He is sitting on a stool. So the holes the arrow goes through must be at least something like 2 feet off the ground. The only possible solution seems to be that the axes all have a metal ring on the end of the helve, presumably so that the axe could be hung on a nail in the wall. Again, an insane trick shot. Now, the cool thing about axes in the Bronze Age, and again, I am not an expert on ancient warfare and weaponry, I know very much, compared to experts, absolute surface level here, there were both single-sided axes and dual-sided axes. And even then, the look of the axes wasn't necessarily uniform. So then, are we doing single-sided axes or dual-sided axes? You get room to play. So that's why I've sometimes also seen the idea that they are put in and people are shooting through a hole that comes from the two curvature of the axe blades. Now that's usually a bit of a wider gap, which would make it less of an impressive trick shot, but still an insane trick shot. So basically, this is a bonkers challenge she fully expects nobody to accomplish, and the only person who could accomplish it is Odysseus. Because again, Aristeia, moment of excellence, the man is that fucking cool. You don't set a challenge like that if you don't think your husband can do it. And right now, again, she's suspecting she's just met with Odysseus. She's like, okay. Again, smartest fucking character in the Odyssey. God, I have missed her. It does admittedly also make me a little more mad at the portrayal of Telemachus in the Wisdom Saga, because she raised him better than that.
Let the arrow fly once you know that your aim is true. 'Cause I'd rather die than grow old without the best of you. Though I never thought that these would be the lengths we go for love, I would not have it any other way. And though I never thought that it would end like this, just know I'll be here
That was fucking sublime.
Oh my god. Jorge, I feel like you gate-kept Penelope from me, and you held onto this song just be like, by the way, sorry about Vengeance Saga. Have you a girl. That's beautiful. And I love the idea, I would rather die than grow old without the best of you. Again, emphasizing, this is the last generation. I mean, yeah, you've got the generation of Telemachus, Orestes, technically Neoptolemus is kind of in there, and everybody else, but they don't really do too much of note. I mean, arguably, Orestes has the most dramatic story in finally ending the nonsense of the House of Atreus. Oh my god. But that's it. There's really no more heroes after them. So, I mean, that attitude is beautiful when you reflect that this is the final generation of heroes. There really are no more after this. And it's just, ooh, that's beautiful. And it, again, we're emphasizing how, I mean, Penelope is obviously noted for her loyalty, but again, how fucking smart she is. There's a reason she is Odysseus' wife. The reason they get along so well is they're both so goddamn clever. There's a reason Athena's just like, that's my boy and girl. Oh, that's so beautiful. And the waiting, repeating waiting. It's been 20 fucking years. The 10 years not knowing if he's died at Troy, and then hearing, and then 10 years, you know, you get the word the war is over, that all these heroes are coming home. Where's Odysseus?
Oh my god.
You get to join Ruthlessness and Thunderbringer, no longer you, get in the water, you're up there. The challenge, you win. Okay. You're up there.
Holy fuck.
And her vocals at the end, like just pushing through. And she sounds like she's, this singer for Penelope is more of a mezzo-soprano, just by the way she shifts up into her head voice and usually some of the higher notes. But man, when she pushes through, it's a beautiful sound. Holy. Sorry, I'm like being blown away by the vocals here and just like the, and again, we're bringing in a lot of the sheer romance of it all. We've really built this Odysseus Penelope thing as meant to be this big sweeping romance, which don't get me wrong, it absolutely is. This is absolutely a top tier romantic through line. My one issue had always been going through this that because we had not introduced Penelope, she felt almost more like an object, this thing that Odysseus is trying to get to and obtain in a way, but she didn't feel like an actual character. And now I know it's because, Jorge, you were gatekeeping her this whole time. You couldn't give me a sneak peek in Wisdom Saga? I'm pouting. I wanted her in Wisdom Saga. Come on. Also, we have not mentioned Telemachus. We haven't heard from him either. Now, yes, it's very much a Penelope solo, but it's interesting we're not bringing up Telemachus at all in any way. Part of that being, of course, I had mentioned in reading that bit about the axes that we know Telemachus is a part of setting up the challenge. He has returned from his trip to Pylos and Sparta. And like he and Odysseus kind of get back seemingly around the same time, closely. Telemachus kind of got there a bit before. This is so interesting because I had said that like wisdom bothered me, where you take what I jokingly call the Telemachus problem, the Ithaca problem, this part of the story that is like universally the trickiest part of the story to adapt. It just is. And taking the very understandable route of laying out the Odyssey in a linear format, it makes it even more clearly the trickiest part to adapt, kind of in the middle there, because it's like, how do you flash to Ithaca? How do you bring in Telemachus? How do you do all this without feeling like you're stepping away from Odysseus, who you've very much brought front and center? Because in the Odyssey, again, the reason you have those first 4 books is we're setting you the stakes. We're showing you what is at stake and everything that's happening there before you then meet the man, the myth, the legend. And it's like, we know very well what he's fighting for. We've met it all. They are real people. It's a real place. Like, we feel it. And that becomes very hard, one, when you lay it out in a linear format, but it can be tricky even if you do it keeping the original construct of the Odyssey, because there's a lot of stuff going on there that, like, is just tricky to get through. And again, part of my sadness, deep, unending sadness over the Wisdom Saga was I felt we lost a lot of the great nuance of what's going on there. But man, we just brought Penelope. You have like, my pores feel cleansed. Years have been put back on my life. That's just such a beautiful song. Wow, what a real standout. What a way to start. Ithaca, do not let me down. Don't start strong and then hurt me. It's my one request. But I will say what I'm gonna love about the Ithaca Saga is seeing how Ithaca is done here in its entitled saga will make me also then look at Wisdom and see what's going on there. And I'll probably get a better gauge overall on the treatment of Ithaca in Wisdom, seeing how it comes to fruition in Ithaca, the saga. Anywho, ooh, that's good. The next song is Hold Them Down. which is an interesting title, and I wonder what that's about. Because in all of this, we obviously have not brought up Odysseus, who is, by this point, should be here in disguise as a beggar running around the island. What are we doing with that? Questions. I am curious. So then what is hold him down? Would that be the suitors having their moment of, like, treating Odysseus like shit when they think he's not the king and he's a beggar? But we've already set the challenge, so that would be weird. I mean, I guess you could fuss the timeline if he comes in and they're all trying to figure out how to string the bow, and I need to stop speculating. We'll get on to hold them down.